Yeah, Cynthia Erivo is playing Elphaba, if you didn't know Elphaba, in the movie adaptation of Wicked. Yes, the play. Yeah, she's playing the witch. Yes, honey. Yeah, shout out to Cynthia Erivo. I recently really had got into Miss Cynthia Erivo. See, honey, I knew she was queer, honey. I knew at one time they identified as non-binary, or maybe still do. I think that they may just not have a preference in pronoun. Um, I started getting into her fashion. See, I was shout out to my friend Andrew. Andrew recommended for me to watch Bad Times at El Royale. And shout out to Andrew. It's a great movie. It's a mystery action type movie. It's a timepiece. It takes place, I believe, in the 70s. Honey, Cynthia shows off her singing chops. I really became a fan. I really became a fan of Cynthia Erivo in this film, honey. Yes, yes. And I started getting into her tea, getting into her fashion tea. Cairo was even putting me on tea. Shout out against the Cairo. Cairo was putting me on tea. Like, yes, I've been on Cynthia Erivo. Get in, get in. I now follow Cynthia, honey. And I ended up even doing a post for one of the platforms that I work for. Yeah, I post for a few platforms, a few different platforms, a couple that I work for. Shout out to them. I posted a Cynthia Erivo appreciation post. Yeah, because I was getting in and I was inspired, honey. Especially, honey, the fashion is crazy. But got a response on the post, got a comment on the post. Has she atoned for platforming anti black American rhetoric? Seems like she denigrates us while profiting off of playing our historical figures. Clearly this is in reference to Harriet. I like the movie Harriet too, but I guess Cynthia was so in her Harriet bag. I really didn't get into Cynthia T like that. Mm. So you know me, I had to do my research, honey. I had to find out what was going on. What has Cynthia done? Because I thought that this was somebody who was non-problematic. You know, she was approved. The appreciation post was approved by the company that I work for. All of the things. I'm like, yes, honey. And then we get this one comment. So I'm like, oh no, what is going on, honey? I got in my Olivia Benson bag, honey. I got in my Olivia Pope bag, honey. All the Olivias, honey. I was in all of the bags. Because I had to find out what has Cynthia Erivo done. Well, honey, let me just pull it up on the screen for y'all right now, honey. Shout out to all the artists who live broadcast, all the artists and educators who live broadcast. Honey, I came across some tweets. I came across some old Cynthia Erivo tweets, honey. You know it's always a tweet that get these stars and celebrities in trouble. An old tweet at that. You would think they had enough sense to scrub the ground by now. You would think they had enough sense to scrub their computers and their pages and stuff before they verified. Honey, me, baby, let them ever get Hollywood together and I get a contract with one of the big machines. I'm starting over new. Honey, y'all better save all that chat. Y'all better save it, honey, because if you ain't got it, it won't be had. It won't be had. All right, let me organize the tweets really quick. Let me organize the tweets so that we can get to the juicy stuff first and we can get to the bottom of the tea. You know how we like to do. You know how we like to do. All right, so they're referring to these incidents of Cynthia referring to black Americans as ghetto or using ghetto using ghetto as a term to be synonymous with black Americans. I was like, oh no, Cynthia, honey, feel free to read the tweet, honey. Joel had essentially asked Cynthia to sing, requested Cynthia to sing on Twitter, which at the time wasn't possible. This was in 2013, honey. And so she responded with ghetto American accent, and you know this some coochie coo song lyrics. Not sure who she was trying to be. So she got vitriol from that. You know, there were a lot of people who spoke out. Even non-black, pro-black people thought that it was their place to reprimand a black woman, or at least a black woman phenotypically. Honey. Yeah, yeah. Cynthia responded, she did her thing. She said, as an African, she believes that in some cases that isn't right. Somebody had reached out and asked, they believe that African American actors should have first crack at African American roles. And Cynthia had to remind them that she is African by race and British by ethnicity. There's a huge difference. Britain is where she was born and where she's lived most of her life. Her lineage is pure African. She's technically probably more genetic African than most African Americans, because, honey, y'all know that we are mixed up with the natives and the colonizers over here, honey. They don't like to talk about it too much, you know, even today. But in doing my research, I realized that Cynthia seems to have a preference, which, you know, a lot of Brits talk about our accent. A lot of Brits, you know, talk about the American accent, period, or American accents in general, because our accents in the U.S. are probably the most diverse over the world, and that's because we're one of the biggest countries with the broadest dialects. You know, our vernacular takes from all different cultures, because that's what American culture is, to take from all different cultures. Let it sink in. But Cynthia seems to have a particular appreciation for accents of people of color who are non-American. You know, maybe she's anti-American, but I'm not necessarily getting anti-black based on the research that I've done thus far. But Cynthia responds to the allegations herself, and I'm assuming that a lot of y'all didn't see this interview. Shout out to Hot 97, shout out to Ebro in the morning, because Cynthia did an interview, and this has been a few years ago, where she responded to this whole idea.
Some black Americans will feel some type of way that a person who is not from America is playing an icon. As a part of our culture. And I want to get into that because we had Samuel L. Jackson on the show a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And that was a shot heard around the world, where he said that he also had kind of an issue with people who didn't have the experience. I think it was his quote, I'm paraphrasing, didn't have the black American experiences playing these roles. I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think that there's a conversation to be had about what the experiences are of other black people around the world. I think there's a misconception that when you're in the UK, you sort of get to bypass all the awful things that happen to you as a black person, but you don't. I've experienced it since I was a little girl. I walk in a room and the first thing you see is the fact that I'm a dark-skinned black girl. That's what you see first. And when I'm in the UK, no one goes, she's a Brit. They go, she's a black girl.
Essentially, Cynthia is saying, for the people in the back, or for the people that don't get the British accent, Cynthia is saying that she is not exempt to racism, and anti-black racism in particular, because she is seen as a black woman, regardless of what country she was born in or how her accent sounds.
Around the world, I think there's a misconception that when you're in the UK, you sort of get to bypass all the awful things that happen to you as a black person, but you don't. I've experienced it since I was a little girl. I walk in a room and the first thing you see is the fact that I'm a dark-skinned black girl. That's what you see first. And when I'm in the UK, no one goes, she's a Brit. They go, she's a black girl. You know?
Right.
That's what happens. I miss out on roles because I'm a black girl and I'm too dark. Or I don't get seen for something because she's not marketable. Or no one would see me in the music business when I was a singer because I was a black girl. That's it. Like, nothing bypasses me. So the experience I have has set me up enough to know what it feels like to be othered and discounted consistently.
Is there, and I think this is, in my travels now and understanding what's happening in the whole diaspora.